The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
Hi, this is Russ Tanner on behalf of Dane Wigington and GeoEngineering Watch Radio. We're here tonight to answer your questions and to speak to you about geoengineering. We hope that you have become familiar with this terminology, and if you aren't familiar with it, we do invite you to stick around for the next hour to learn what geoengineering is all about. Dane Wigington will join us in just a moment. He is from GeoEngineering Watch Radio. You can go to his website at geoengineeringwatch.org. He will be with us in just a moment, and at his website, geoengineeringwatch.org, you can find all types of information, all kinds of information that will inform you about what we believe is one of the most important issues. In fact, we believe it is the most important issue of our time. We hope that you will take the time to educate yourself about geoengineering, about the lines that you see in the sky when you look up and you see the lines in the sky. We hope that you will take the time to learn about what that is, what is going on, why are these aircraft emitting these plumes. We have dramatic changes going on in our world today, and Dane will be with us in just a minute to fill you in on some of these technical details about these changes that we're all experiencing. We're having massive animal die-offs. Not only are we having this in various countries of the world, but even in the oceans, we are having tremendous die-offs in terms of insect population. And we are also having enormous amounts of aluminum show up, not only in rainwater tests, but it's also showing up in blood tests, in dust tests. And it's important for people to know where this aluminum is coming from. Where is this contamination coming from? This is part of the geoengineering program that we see going on in the world today. I want to know, I would like to make audio contact with the host of the show and see if he is available as of yet. Soon as he's here, hopefully I'll be able to hear him, and we will be able to get some information from Dane. He is the founder of geoengineeringwatch.org. Now, for those who don't know about geoengineering, don't know about the plumes coming out of the planes, we'd like to introduce you to this subject by letting you know that we have USDA biologist who has monitored the decline in insect population. We have others who have seen and monitored the decline in animal populations around the world. We are having massive amounts of aluminum show up in trees, and this sometimes manifests as white bark syndrome. And this is what happens when the trees uptake so much aluminum, free aluminum from the soil. The bark can turn white and cause problems with the tree. Now, I'm hearing a little bit something. Dane, are you with us?
This is GeoEngineering Watch Radio and Global Alert News for the week of July 14th, 2015. So much is happening right now, and I apologize for the glitches on this radio show. We're trying to upgrade, we're trying to improve, we're trying to get the word out on a higher level. This show will be broadcast in Northern California, where there is no such news program available on KQMS Saturday morning, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock a.m. under the title of Global Alert News. Right now, what we have from mainstream media is a total travesty. The kind of disinformation they put out, or virtual non-information, is beyond comprehension at this point. It's nothing more than a circus of distraction and lies and disinformation. So while everybody's pretending that life is going along just fine with virtually no comprehension of the imploding biosphere around them, the imploding military-industrial complex, it's truly astounding, even at this late date, how few have a clue of what is actually unfolding around them. Total economic collapse is not a matter of if, but a matter of when. The Eurozone was only ever an attempt to control countries by taking away their ability to print their own currency. Greece is about to implode. That will be the start of the dominoes falling. Much more to happen after that. We've talked about this on the show before. Global shipping of goods is measured on the Baltic Dry Index. Global shipping has gone off a cliff. So why is the U.S. stock market so high? Because it's a complete fraud. It's a smoke and mirrors illusion of money printing. So many still don't realize this. And Russ, I don't know, I'm not sure I can hear you, but I want to start interacting a little earlier. We're going to do things a little bit different now as we go into a different format. But on the illusion of the economy, how many people, Russ, do you know that have any idea that things are amiss?
Unfortunately, it's way too few. Very few people, Dane, are really even concerned enough about it. I mean, I think that under the surface, a lot of people do know something's amiss, but the problem is, in mass, the people I know are just ignoring it, Dane.
I'm still getting only about every third word, so I'm not sure what's up on this end with the audio, but I got most of that. And yes, people aren't aware. And on the economic issues, this is directly connected to climate engineering, the state of the biosphere, the imploding natural systems on our planet. Historically, 75% of all global GDP was produced for free from nature. And that's no longer the case. It's no longer going to be the case because we have literally an imploding biosphere. So that being a given, and it's being shielded from the population right now with an endless amount of distractions and disinformation. And it's astounding to me how few people have any clue that anything's wrong. And again, this is directly connected. All of this is connected. The economic situation, climate engineering, which is my focus, and its effects. Everything is intertwined and connected. And from what we see in our skies, the atrocities we see in our skies, to the obviously unsustainable nature of our total global economic and societal paradigm, so few people yet have a clue. I mean, you find that to be the case around you as well, Russ, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the case around here. People don't have a clue, and they're just not concerned about it. They're just going about their lives pretending everything is okay.
Your family and your friends, we've talked about this before, but certainly it's a daily source of frustration for most of us that have an idea what's going on. The amount of people who truly have no idea that anything is amiss is still astounding to me. I just made a trip into the forest interior in Northern California again yesterday, and the amount of die-off there is alarming, to say the least. The forest is riddled with dead and dying trees. I photographed some of the aquatic plants that live in the canyons in Northern California. There's a huge, broad, wide leaf that normally the stream beds are covered with. It's 12 to 18 inches wide, and these leaves are normally very lush and green. They're completely curled up and browned out, even though their feet are in the water, even though the roots are in the water. The UV is so incredibly intense, it's literally frying the leaves up. We've already talked about the tree damage from the UV, which is astoundingly intense and uncomfortable. Russ, I know as far in the Northeast as you are, I think you've stated this before, but on the UV, you can feel the intensity of the sun if you get a direct shot, can you not?
Oh, absolutely. You can feel the intensity of sun. I've heard this from many people around the United States, that the intensity of sun is noticeably more intense than it has been in past years, very much so.
It's astoundingly more intense. So when we couple that back to the crops, back to the GDP, back to what's being kept and hidden from us, this is affecting crop production. It's affecting the the oceans to a degree that can scarcely be imagined. We have global pelagic fish populations down now 90 to 95%. That's the food fish, global pelagic fish population. So how much longer will we be eating fish? And the fish that is caught, how toxic is that fish? Whether it's poison from the Corexit in the Gulf of Mexico or the Pacific being completely contaminated with radiation from Fukushima, and there's endless amount of other sources. We've been using the oceans for toilets for how many years in toxic waste dumps. This is the legacy of the human race at this point. This is the legacy we will leave to our children. And again, the illusion from hiding how horrifically our oceans are imploding to just how artificial the whole, quote, global economy is. It's a complete facade. We have, in China, for example, China's GDP is finally, can't be hidden that it's plummeting now. How's China kept that GDP up for so long? In China, we have, for those that haven't heard of the ghost cities, this is simply a term used for massive cities with no one in them, cities that have been built simply to keep the gross domestic product up, to keep their growth percentage up, building cities with no inhabitants. Russ, you've heard of the ghost cities, right?
Yes, I have. There's been a lot online about them. There have been articles written about them. These are massive cities that are just absolutely desolate. Nobody's there.
Yeah, and this is, again, what a whole lot of people have no idea about. And more or less, this is happening in the USA as well. How many, for example, road projects do we see that really had no practical purpose except keeping a whole lot of people busy doing something, being paid with printed money from central banks? And again, for listeners who don't really know, most of our listeners probably do know how the whole economic facade is kept afloat. But central banks are not in any way connected to the government. It's private bankers. The Federal Reserve is nothing really federal or governmental about it. It's, again, private bankers who print whatever they want. And how do they keep the snake eating its own tail, which is what the global economic system is? They just print money and pump it into the system. And so I've seen a number of highway projects recently, especially in Northern California. I've seen it before in Arizona, where we have projects being done that absolutely were counterproductive, didn't need to be done, or both those factors. But yet we see this going on, and it's simply keeping people busy, burning up resources and keeping the facade going. Russ, have you seen that kind of paving projects going on where you're at ever, where you stand back and think, did this really need to be done?
Well, we do. Yeah, we see all kinds of projects happening. I know, being that I am in Maine, road projects are often done, but they really need them up here. But I've heard a lot of that kind of feedback, Dane. I've heard many people who have seen these signs, your tax dollars are at work. They're having projects, they're publicizing the work that they're doing, and it seems like they're just trying to keep people busy. They're trying to keep money flowing. This is happening all over, I think.
Yeah, we see a whole lot of that. I'm doing my best on this end again. I'm getting about every third word, but I'm catching enough. While the global economy is starting to unravel, and it certainly is unraveling. In fact, after Greece goes down, which is a matter of time, whatever, doesn't matter whatever austerity deal they signed, again, the climate engineers are tearing the biosphere apart. We've polluted the planet from too many directions to even count, and the population has been trained to ignore everything in exchange for whatever distraction is made available to them for the week. Spain, Portugal, Puerto Rico probably going to fall next, all massive debts. The chain of dominoes for the Eurozone is probably close to an unstoppable implosion. And again, even at this late date, the amount of people that have any inkling that something is wrong is astoundingly low. And nowhere is this more visible than the kind of skies that we see and the sort of weather that we see that's anything but right, and yet so many people still debate that there's anything wrong, and that's a sad testimony to modern society, if you will, and this is the root of all of this, that we have so many people willing to participate in the delusion so long as it provides them what they feel is security. And that's another sad testimony to society. So with the kind of economic house of cards that's been set up for so long, and it's amazing how long they've kept it going. I have to admit to that. I felt the water would be coming over the deck of the Titanic. It certainly is coming over the deck of the Titanic now, but I'm amazed how long the ship has stayed afloat, more or less, how long they've been able to hide the incredibly obvious from the majority of the population. Do you find that astounding, Russ? I mean, do you find it incredible that given the things we are surrounded by, the kind of atrocities we see in our sky with climate engineering, to the sort of obvious criminality in the government, the lies that we see from every direction, from the lie of unemployment being what it is to the long list of other government lies. Do you find it incredible that people around you still aren't outraged?
It is incredible. It's absolutely amazing, and sometimes it's very surreal, Dane, to live in a world where their government is lying to them on a normal basis. The corruption is running so very deep. Money is being spent needlessly. The important issues are not being dealt with, and yet people seem oblivious. They seem like they don't care. They seem incredibly apathetic. And in fact, I'll have to say that this is one of the most amazing times that I have ever imagined possibly even living in, to see people so incredibly apathetic about issues that affect them so profoundly and affect their country and their world. Yet they just keep on living their lives and ignoring the incredible impact that these things are having on their families, on their health, on their environment, on the whole planet. It is amazing.
On that note, I know there's a lot of people out there that are working toward exposing climate engineering, and certainly that would be the greatest leap forward to exposing a lot of this, what we've just outlined, what the things our government has done and continues to do in plain sight, from the spraying that we currently see above us to the dozens of biological tests done on innocent U.S. civilians, which historical fact is recorded. But it's the amount of people that are willing to participate in the lie, willing to protect the lie, so dependent on the lie, they have to support the very system, or they feel compelled to support the very system which will eliminate any chance for their future or a future for their children. And that's really the paradigm we're in. Think about that for a moment. We live in a society where the vast majority of people feel compelled to defend the very system that will eliminate any chance for a future for them or their children if it continues. And that's truly a paradox. On that note, Russ, if we could, I think our call-in numbers are there. If we have, and my screen doesn't seem to be working properly on this end, so if you see call-ins, if we have anybody waiting on the lines right now, let's grab those.
Absolutely. And would you like me to announce the number, or are we going to wait on that?
I think it's already on this. Should be on the screen for people signing in, I think. And again, we're feeling our way through this new system here, but you can announce that number, if that's a help. But I think it should be on everybody's screen if they tried to tune in. Maybe I'm wrong. Doug maybe can correct me on that as well. But if it'll help to announce a number, let's go ahead.
Okay, for those who'd like to call in, the call-in number is 516-666-9491. That is 516-666-9491, and you'll be put on hold, and you'll be connected with us in just a moment. Please have your questions ready. It looks like we may have somebody available. I think Doug can let us know if we have someone. Yes, I think we have someone ready. So it's up to you, Dane, if you're ready for a caller.
Yes.
This is Gary.
Hey, Gary, good to have you. I know Gary's down from Tampa, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Good, Gary. How's it going? How's it going there? Can you hear me okay, Gary?
Yeah. I hear you. Am I coming in okay?
Yeah, you're coming through loud and clear. So how's it going in Tampa? What do you have going on down there?
Well, I've been still calling. I got the EPA, some headway with the EPA. He's willing to send me some information via email. About the weather modification that's going on, that I've been really, pushing on them, calling every day, Monday through Friday. I uploaded a recording that I did with him. And I did tell him later that I did record him, and that I have it online. He said he would be able to, he told me that, he don't have no proof that they already did an investigation on what's being emitted out of the planes. He's saying that we already did the test. There's no evidence. He's saying that's what I told him.
You're saying this is someone from the EPA? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the EPA here in Florida, Tampa, Florida.
Okay, so they did an investigation and they found that there's nothing unusual coming out of the planes? I'm
sorry. He actually gave me the number to the state, the EPA in the state of, the capital in Tallahassee.
Tallahassee, Florida. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. His name is Tom Rogers. I have that. I gave the link to, I can post a link maybe on Facebook where you could, it's a audio recording that I did, to address this issue that's going on. I tell him, okay, I called him just yesterday. I told him, look, they're doing it again. I'm watching this. He said, well, those are just condensation trails. I said, well, it's turning our rainy season should be raining every day. And it's like going 3 days without rain, and then it'll rain, then it'll go 2 days without rain, then it'll rain the next day, then it'll go 4 days without rain. That's not typical Florida rainy season. Russ, the rainy season in Florida. I
knew. I grew up north of Tampa, Newport Richey, Florida, and I'll tell you what it is. We have about a 30 to 60 minute downpour every day, and then it clears up and is sunny. I mean, that's the weather every day. The weather report was hilarious because it was identical every day when I was growing up.
Yeah, and
Gary,
it's like clockwork.
This is Dane. Forgive me for cutting you off because I can barely hear. I can barely hear anything you guys are saying. I get about every fourth or fifth word, but I want to get at some unique information from your perspective where you're at, and that would be this. One, what's the economy like where you're at? And the weather is a part of that, is it not? I mean, you're in Florida and tourism and so forth. And two, as per our earlier discussion before we brought callers on, is anybody around you, or how many people around you are at all conscious of the fact that the illusion is starting to break apart, that in fact the biosphere is starting to implode, the house of cards that was the totally unsustainable paradigm of economic activity, this endless consumption on a finite world with finite resources, and certainly climate engineering speeding that along by destroying the biosphere's functionality. How many people around you are aware of that, Gary?
There's a lot of people around me. I met people in the March Against Geoengineering, and I met someone there from near Miami, and I mentioned it on the show when Russ did the show on the April 25th. She's near the Miami area. She's telling me it's going weeks without rain near the Miami area or north of Miami, and I'm telling her, I said, that's not even normal for Florida. So this is definitely geoengineering. There's so much evidence that geoengineering is affecting the rain. It's actually sending the rain inland. And we used to get, Tampa used to be the lightning capital of like the United States, and now all our rain and thunderstorms are being shifted inland to inland, like there's a town called Lakeland, Florida, and it's like in the middle, almost, it's kind of like, it's 28 miles from, and all the rain is like migrating that way.
Yeah, we know things are being disrupted, but again, if I could get at that root question, are there very many people around you that are cognizant of the fact that from the biosphere, from the weather to the economy, that we are...
Well, you had someone... I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Barely. Try to say that one more time.
I said you had someone from South Miami near Key West. He mentioned that he's seen it down there, and and we have people reporting from St. Petersburg. We have people, reporting that it's like a cloud cover, but it's not like really like clouds. It's like modified. It's like hazy, that milky looking sky stuff. But
we're not talking about the same thing. I want to know if there's people around you that sense, and maybe I'm not hearing it because I'm only getting every fourth or fifth word. Are there very many people around you that sense their reality is about to go upside down?
Yeah, there's people. Are you talking about like the ones that are mentioning Jay Helm?
Yeah, I lost all audio. I apologize. Hopefully that answer came through.
I can hear you.
Anything on this end. But Gary, hey, thank you for the update from there. And I'm not sure if we have. I apologize if I'm not. If I'm coming across it all rude because I can't hear, and I'm not sure when the full conversations because I really can't hear much of anything on this end. But I appreciate the update from Florida, and forgive me if we have any more calls. We'll try to go through what we can. Russ, is there anybody else on now?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, Dane, bye-bye, Gary. Thank you again for the update, and thank you for the work you're doing. We're waiting on callers to come in. We're working on getting, of course, the system all coordinated since this is the new system. But you're coming through.
On this end, Russ, I can hardly hear a thing. I mean, I'm literally getting about every fourth or fifth word. But anyway, to continue on right now with the kind of conditions that, I think I heard Gary describing with, the weather conditions that are there. Where is the weather normal? Where is it usual? Really nowhere that I know of. And still people seem to be able to excuse away so much as being natural or a natural cycle. And I have a great deal of difficulty understanding how people can talk themselves into this conclusion. If you upset a certain equilibrium, and certainly there's no arguing we've done on the planet. The planet has what's called an energy balance. This is what's kept the equilibrium. And in fact, climate-wise, over the last 10,000 years, more or less, the climate equilibrium has been unique in the planet's history, stable, and to a degree that was not really evident in the paleo record, the long-term record. And if you upset that balance, or anything you do to upset that balance has to have an effect, I should say. And it's perplexing to me how many people will buy the notion that nothing the human race has done, from climate engineering to the cutting down of forests, the poisoning of oceans, so on and so forth, all of which are a form of geoengineering. And it's perplexing to me that I hope people begin to understand this. Let me say it that way. I hope people begin to understand that anything that the human race does to upset that equilibrium, upset that energy balance, has to have an effect. And all forms of that type of disruption are, in a sense, a form of engineering is really the wrong term. It implies some sort of exact science. It's a form of disruption. Climate engineering should be called climate disruption, frankly. It's not, there's nothing exact about it, and the term engineering is far too dignified. Would you agree, Russ? Is climate engineering and geoengineering far too dignified a term for completely derailing the Earth's climate system in a totally haphazard and completely destructive way? Engineering is too dignified a term, is it not?
Absolutely too dignified of a term to massively spraying aluminum. And we're getting reports of all kinds of metals showing up in dust tests, in rainwater, Dane, exotic toxic metals that shouldn't be there, from people who know how to test rainwater. So yeah, this has the term engineering does not fit what is going on here. This is just seems like a form of madness, quite honestly.
It's a form of madness. That's exactly what it is. In fact, if we look at so many aspects of human activity, there are many forms of this, quote, madness, the greatest, the epitome of which is climate engineering. But on so many fronts, does it not all, to some degree, fit into the same category, from the ghost cities, which I described earlier, to the printing of money to try to keep this artificial facade going? And I'm back to the type of economic activity I'm talking about. I've seen several state highways paved and repaved over and over that never needed to be done in the first place, simply to keep these crews working. And is that not a similar form of madness, to burn up that amount of materials and resources and certain places they're estimating sides, try to take out a curve or two here or there in these mountain roads through Northern California that were fine, never a traffic jam, never a backup, but now there've been backups for 3-4 years because they're literally hacking the hillsides apart, making slopes that are, from an engineering standpoint, far too steep. And I know a fair amount about that. I've been a licensed general contractor since I was 21 years old, done a lot of rugged terrain, road and highway work involved with that. And the steepness of the slopes they're making in Northern California, they're collapsing. So this road work is going backward, not forward. And we look at that kind of activity, or the notion that, for example, we could build seawalls around our rapidly rising ocean to shield off the sea. How incredibly futile is this type of notion? You could throw giant wrenches into the works of nature. And that, again, there's a lot of wrenches. It's not just climate engineering like some would like to think. It's so many things. It's hard to know where to start. I mean, from the cutting and burning down of the forests, the paving of the planet, the poisoning of the oceans, where would one start? But is it not total folly, Russ, to think that man, or some of society thinks that man can tech his way out of this?
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, Dane, we have a recent report that came out a couple months ago about glyphosate, which is Roundup, Monsanto's Roundup, showing up in 75% of rainwater tests. This is another form of the madness, that we think that we can up our profits, but we're sacrificing the long term. We're sacrificing the long haul. And to keep, like you're talking about, keeping our profits up in the short term, we're sacrificing the future. And this does not make any sense at all.
That's a perfect example, Russ. That's a perfect example. Let's look at farm chemicals. Before farm chemicals, or when they first began to be used, earlier in the 20th century, there were some 12 to 14 known chemical-resistant pests, I should say. And after so many decades of chemical use, now there's something like 700 known chemical-resistant pests. Are we going backward or forward? Obviously, we're going backward. You can't get something for nothing from nature. You can't. So if we look at the total disaster that is genetically modified organisms and the chemicals that go with them, total disaster. And then we carry that up to the epitome of human insanity, climate engineering, to try to engineer the entire biosphere. Where is sanity in this equation? And back to what's happening right now around the globe. It can't be stopped. You can't turn it off. The momentum is far too immense. Again, it would be like after the Thelma and Louise moment, when you've gone through the guardrail, you're sailing through the air toward the bottom of the canyon, thinking you could apply your brakes and stop. You can't stop. There's still a lot of people that feel if A, B, and C could be done, the planet would go right back to what it was. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The inertia is absolutely immense. And in fact, in regard to the climate itself, there's been efforts to hide the severity of what's happening for a very, very long time. Russ, do you remember, or you've certainly seen articles on the fact that in the early 70s, there was some talk in the meteorological community of a coming ice age. You knew that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the early 70s. Had you ever heard that?
Yeah, I've heard that. I was taught in high school, in elementary.
If I don't respond correctly, again, it's because I can only hear about every fourth or fifth word. So let's carry that out. Let's look at why might that have happened then, because it's happening again now. A lot of people have seen the latest coming ice age disinformation. But let's go back to the 70s. Now, why did it happen then? We know geoengineering really kicked off in the late 40s. And there was, a an initial, more profound cooling effect from the 40s to the early 70s. And I'm weaving this all back into the epitome of human insanity and thinking they could tech their way out of the damage done. So the whole goal of those in power is to keep their machine going, to keep business as usual going. That's their goal. That's what their empire is built on. It's not built on forms of energy that might be completely beneficial to society. It's built on what they can control. So by the early 70s, we did have a more profound cooling effect from climate engineering initially, before all the negatives kicked in, before the forests began to die from protracted drought due to the desiccant particulates, the blocking of the sun, the shredding of the ozone layer. It could go on and on. But you had still a huge segment of society that was willing to say exactly what the climate engineers and the power structure wanted them to say. I found reports from Stanford on the aluminum particulates they were finding in the Arctic in the 50s. Now, how can the climate science community not know this is going on in their skies if that's their job? How can they not know? And yet they keep towing the line for the power structure. And everybody at some level keeps buying into the notion that somehow, some way, the magical technology will fix everything in the end, because people have seen too many science fiction movies, perhaps, and they want to believe this. But isn't this, Russ? I think I say you had a call on. We'll take that in a minute. But do you see people around you buying into that? The notion that somehow technology, the government, somebody out there knows what's going on and they're working on it and it'll all be fine. How many people around you have that notion?
I believe most people prefer to have that notion that I know because it's more comfortable. They want to believe that somebody's going to handle these problems for them. And of course, you and I know that that is the biggest mistake you can make in just believing that government is going to take care of these things for you. But Dane, so many people are buying into that, and they want to be comforted with the idea that they don't have to do anything. The government is going to take care of it for them.
Now, on that note, there's a person who's recently out of the service that I've known for a long time. And climate engineering, that was ultimately his conclusion. Well, he said, if it's going on, the government must know what they're doing, and it must be for our own good. And that's as far as he would think through the situation. If the government's doing it, it must be for our own good. I couldn't get him any further than that. And I'm not saying all our military brothers and sisters are in that camp by any means. There's many that are wide awake and alert. And Mario Ramirez, freshly out of the Navy, who's an outstanding individual that wants to sound the alarm. The general that has called me 4 weeks ago and is trying to help, and General Albert Stubblebine, also speaking out, and so many military people speaking out, great people. But there are those like this one particular military member I just mentioned who had that attitude that the sort of somebody will take care of me, whatever the government's doing, it must be for my own good. That's a pretty unfortunate attitude right now, given all that we know, isn't it, Russ?
It absolutely is, Dane. And I would add this, there is mercury in amalgam dental fillings. Mercury, a very toxic metal. And when I first started teaching people about this in about 2000, between 2000 and 2005, people said, oh, the government would never allow that. And they actually would disbelieve it when I told them. Then for the next couple years, people were saying, I've heard something about that. And then a few years after that, people started saying, yeah, I know, I'm getting mine out, or I have already gotten my fillings out and replaced with other safer fillings. So there was a real paradigm shift over time, but it really began with that belief that you're talking about right now, that the government would never allow anything that's harmful to happen.
That's a great example. I mean, what a great example. What genius decided to put mercury in our mouths? What genius decided to put fluoride in the water? People, how can they possibly come to a conclusion that that was done for our own good? That's truly an astounding level of denial, and yet it's the norm. That's the norm. So those of us who say openly and with certainty that the paradigm we've known and what the human race has done was completely unsustainable, from the kind of quote-unquote health treatments we just mentioned to the epitome of which is what we're doing in the atmosphere. Those of us who recognize the folly in this are considered fringe, and those who decide to remain buried in denial are considered normal, if you will. That's a sad state of humanity. Russ, if there's someone on hold, I'm sorry. Let's get to them.
We are waiting and available to take calls for those who want to call in. And Dane, I'll be happy to give the number out if those are missing it. I know some people are coming to the new system we're using, so some people are filtering. It's taking a little bit of time. But for those who'd like to call, we'd like to hear from you. The number is 516-666.
I know we're having some issues with this system. If anybody, if anybody manages to get through, I'm not sure what's wrong on my end. I can barely hear anything, and I can't see the screen's not working properly. We'll get it worked out for next week, I'm sure. But anyway, if we have anything on those fronts, let me know. But in the next weeks, the situation in some places around the globe, we have about 36 countries right now descending into chaos. Americans are completely sheltered from that. We talked about a lot of other things that people are oblivious to, Russ, from the economic system to what's happening in our skies. How many people do you know that are aware that there's that many countries that are really completely unraveling right now? How many people do you know that know that?
Not nearly enough. I mean, I know the people who I've met online who make it their mission to know are the only people I know. The people I know in my close acquaintances or friends that I know personally, that I have physical contact with, very, very few people are even paying attention to this thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's I caught most of that, I think, but it's astounding that even at this late hour, again, that so few people have any idea. But the importance of, again, even if you're marginalized, and everybody who's listening or on this call or engaged in this battle of trying to expose climate engineering knows what it feels like, people to try to marginalize you, because it makes them feel more comfortable. If somehow they can shatter your belief, maybe that will help them feel safer in their bubble. But don't let them. Absolutely never let someone in any way diminish your conviction towards speaking the truth that so desperately needs to be heard. And keep in mind also that every single person in denial today, whether it's on the true state of the environment, the climate engineering, what kinds of things our country has done around the globe, 9/11, whatever it is, the truth will be revealed soon enough. There's just no hiding, especially in the case of climate engineering. You can't hide that much longer. I mean, the forests are silent. It absolutely breaks my heart. The location I was in the forest interior for a short time yesterday, that used to look like a lush green paradise. Terrible, absolutely terrible. Fir trees that are 400 and 500 years old, dead, that were healthy and robust only a few years ago. Live oaks, canyon live oaks, one of the hardiest trees on the planet, flashed out, dead. Others are dying. There's no birds. There's actually no fish in sections of the Pitt River. Once the premier trout fishing river, there's no trout. There's none. And I know there's none because I've dove some extensive sections of that river last summer. The water's even warmer now. Not a single trout. Nothing. No crawdads. And I dove under the biggest, deepest, most turbulent pools. You can get, when you have turbulence in a river, you can get down underneath that turbulence where the fish, if they're there, will typically congregate. Nothing. I found nothing. And nobody talks about that. In fact, if you go into the local fishing stores, if you will, the fly fishing stores and so forth, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it at all. Even, Russ, even with people who are being directly impacted by this, who should be livid, they're sometimes the most in denial. Have you noted that?
Yeah, absolutely. Some people who are most impacted are the ones who I believe put themselves into denial the most because it is the most frightening to them. And on a subconscious level, people don't want to face something this frightening. This is frightening to think of the depth and the implication of what is going on. This is absolutely unfathomable. I know many alternative news stations are picking up on this and beginning to talk about this, but we're not hearing this on mainstream media, except that they're spreading disinformation about it. But people are in such deep denial about this, Dane, and we're not getting any help from mainstream media in bringing this information to the general public.
Yeah, it's difficult to even comprehend that kind of denial. Again, especially this particular large Northern California fishing store called the Fly Shop. I mean, I don't know what they're catching. It can't be much. Maybe some bass who don't mind hot water. But everything's imploding. They're trying to keep in Lake Shasta, which is in my backyard. It's getting down to mud puddle size. They're trying to keep some of the cooler water, which there really isn't much of, in the lake, to let it out at just the right moment to try to keep the salmon going. It's ridiculous. I mean, the kind of effort that's being gone to right now is so futile and so totally unsustainable, with no acknowledgement of the bigger picture that it's hotter than hell. It is in Northern California. I know there's people back east that have not been subjected to our weather. We've been all over that. The eastern U.S. is the most constantly engineered cool down zone in the entire world. But the eastern U.S. is not the whole world. It's 1/2 of 1% of the Earth's surface area. That's not the whole world. That's 1/200th. They have worked very hard on cooling that down. So for those of us that live in this heat and see the sort of futile efforts to try to keep, for example, the fish going by saving a little cold water behind the dam and dumping it out at the right minute, is that like trying to stop a tidal wave with a Dixie cup? Literally? I mean, how long can that go on? Does that seem futile to you, Russ, trying to save a little bit of cold water behind a dam to let it out at just the right moment so maybe a few of the salmon fry will live maybe an extra few days? Does that seem futile?
Yeah, not only futile, but it's just another form of madness that keeps people feeling like somebody's trying to do something when they're doing absolutely nothing, they're accomplishing nothing, and it is the epitome of futility, Dane. It really is. Yeah,
just about the same kind of insane attempt to, again, engineer the climate. An example I once saw that related to geoengineering that someone pinned was it would be like if someone was rocking a boat back and forth, a small boat, and then someone else thought they could stand up and move exactly in the right manner to counteract that rocking. It's impossible. I mean, to think that these guys could in any way do anything but harm the climate, it's utter insanity. I mean, when they do one thing in one part of the globe relating back to the boat, it obviously affects the other. You can't stabilize something like this. You can only make it rock worse. You can only hamper it worse and worse and worse. And that's what's happening. And not to mention destroying the natural systems at the same time, or putting holes in the bottom of the boat at the same time. And on this particular issue, though, we are getting closer to critical awareness for the fact that people just can't ignore it any longer. And Russ, isn't that when people wake up, when they can't keep their head in the hole any longer?
Yeah, that is, isn't that history though? I mean, that is unfortunately the human dilemma, is people who can avoid these catastrophes by acting proactively, intelligently, before they fall off the cliff. But that is historically not what people do. People wait until they're at the Roadrunner moment. That's the old Roadrunner cartoon moment that I often refer to, where the coyote has gone off the cliff and is hanging in the air for a few seconds before it plummets into the canyon. And that is about the moment that people wake up. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
good,
that's when
that's a
people
good
wake up.
example.
Yes.
That's a great example, and that's the sort of moment we're in, and the conditioning that people have had to have this sort of Pollyanna faith in, quote, technology. Where has technology brought us so far? Where? It's put us on a path to mathematical certain extinction unless we have a very big change of direction very soon. It's put us on that path. So the faster that we, again, if we can focus on a weak spot in the armor, and this, back to climate engineering, with all this, with the economic deception, the notion that you can perpetually expand on a finite planet with finite resources, perpetually loot, pillage, plunder, poison the entire planet, that's idiocracy of the first order. But if there's a weak spot in the armor, a spot that we could hammer on that's so such a blanket effect to the global population, affecting every man, woman, child, every part of their life, their potential future, the most direct assault of all, climate engineering. The issue that if we could get that to light would absolutely shock the population into waking up and taking a stand. That is the issue. This is the issue. That's why we're focused on this for all of us. And I talk to a lot of people that are certainly feel discouraged at a sense of futility, if you will, but I would argue we have gained much more ground than is yet visible. The undercurrent of awareness is much, much larger. Even for those who roll their eyes and walk away, they're aware. Now they're aware. And now they're looking. And perhaps for some of those people, Russ, you've encountered this, for some people, because they've for so long denied, now they're sort of caught in having to maintain that denial even more tenaciously, because to do otherwise would be to admit they were wrong the whole time. Have you not encountered such a person?
Absolutely encounter such a person. I call it pride. I mean, people are too ashamed to admit that they've been duped. And it's often, it's been said that it's easier to, well, I should say it this way. It's very difficult to get somebody to admit that they've been duped. Pride gets in the way, and that's part of the problem. We need to be humble and say, we've been duped. Let's solve the problem. Let's just solve the problem and not worry about our mistakes of the past. Let's just stop making the mistakes now and admit that we've made them in the past.
It is a form of pride, very dangerous pride, that the kind of pride that keeps people just going about their business on the deck of the Titanic. And that's a bad place to be. But the more those people know, the more that seed of awareness is there and planted, the more chance we have of changing the flavor of what we face. So what we do is not futile. It's not futile. And our job is to deliver the message, period. And to know what the facts are. That's important. Don't keep marching in a certain direction because that's the certain knee-jerk impression you had of the overall situation. You never bother to take your compass heading again. You never bother to look at new data, to reassess your conclusions. Don't do that. That doesn't help our cause. Look at the data, connect the dots properly, or you won't have a clear picture. You'll have a big spider web of dots that don't form any kind of coherent picture. Look at the data every day, share that data with confidence, and know that your only job is to deliver the message. Then the burden is on whoever you delivered the message to, period. And people should take solace in that, no matter what. And this is something that can't be taken from many of us if we do this. And if we do, and we all work together, and we don't become tired or mentally broken, we will achieve an immense amount of success, even at this late hour, if we continue to march together. Russ?
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely. I completely agree, Dane. It is amazing the power that people have when they get together. These bureaucrats, the industrialists, the bureaucrats who are causing so many problems, or the people who are abusing the system or taking advantage of the system, historically back down every time the people come together and do something in a coordinated effort. And we need to do this yesterday. And I'm glad that, Dane, we have the honor of doing a show like this that wakes people up to this issue, which I think is the most important issue we've ever faced.
It is. Mathematically speaking, it is. But it's imperative people. Russ?
Yep, Dane, I lost your last few words. Are you still with us?
Something cut through. Something the Blog Talk Radio thing cut through. I'm not sure what we had there, but it's important people don't think dichotomously. Our situation is very complex. It's not just this or that. We have to look at the whole picture. Don't cut things into little pieces that and try to make out of an equation that's not black and white. So let's all keep looking at the data. Let's reassess our conclusions every day, and let's keep sounding the alarm. Russ?
Absolutely. I agree, Dane. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot of work to do, and I hope that those who are hearing this program will wake up and take this matter very seriously. This is Russ Tanner on behalf of GeoEngineering Watch Radio and News. The GeoEngineering Watch News Hour, we're here every Tuesday night. We'll see you here next week.